we're going to build a Notion-style multi-tenant task tracker SaaS application using Next.js and Clerk as the infrastructure for user management and auth, organization for multi-tenant architecture, and also billing for subscription management, all in one single platform. So let's have a look at the project first, and then we're going to dive into the code together. So let's go ahead and sign in to be able to create our first task or create a default project to create our task. I'm going to log in with my account over here. Once I log in, this is going to force me to create an organization. I've already enabled orgs on this instance. Don't worry, I'll walk you through how to do this once we jump into building this together. So I'm going to create my first org. Let's call this friends. And now I can start creating my new task. So let's say build the project. That's my new task. Status of planned. Let's also do record the project. Let's also have one for editing the project. Now you can move projects between different tabs or different columns, really. It's a pipeline style or a Kanban board. You could delete them. You can add inline, upload to YouTube. Sorry, I misspelled the YouTube, but you get the idea. You could delete a specific project and whatnot. You can also create more organizations because we have enabled orgs, and this is where the multi-tenancy comes into play. So let me just quickly show you that on the organization switcher, we have this orgs profile where you can access your organization profile. You can invite members. Let's actually go ahead and invite a member so I can show it to you how this works. So let's invite a new member. You can also select what role you want to give them when you invite them. By default, they're going to be a member. We're going to talk about billing in a second, but you can access all of the orgs related information right inside of your organization profile. Now, to showcase the billing and how it ties into our application here, if we were to create a new project, we are prompted to upgrade to a pro plan. So creating projects, it's a pro feature. Now, how you monetize your SaaS application or what you include in the pro tier differs from business to business. It can be per seats, it can be per usage, like limiting the API calls, for example, if it's an AI app, or it can be just access to more features or to more premium features. In this case, if a user wants to create projects to group the tasks in different projects, we want them to upgrade to a pro plan. So if I click on the pro plan, it's going to take me to our pricing page. I'm using the pricing table, which is a drop-in component from Clerk that allows us to easily show a pricing table. Now, if I go ahead and click on the subscribe, I'll have the checkout dialog open up from Clerk. Again, a drop-in component that you don't have to worry about. I can go ahead and pay with test card on development mode. So that just makes development easy. I can hit continue here. And now I'll be brought back to the homepage where I have access to this pro feature, which is creating new projects. Let's call this project YouTube. Let's say content roadmap. Hit select. You get the idea. Now I have two different projects. I'm grouping different tasks based on my different project. Before I wrap and actually jump into the implementation, let's also go to the other user that we had, log in and see the invitation there. We have received an email, but to just make it easier here, not having to switch into my email, I'm just going to log in to that same app with the user email that we invited. And now once we're logged in here, we can see that we have an invitation for this friends group to join. So I can join to this and then select this as my active org. And now I can access all of the projects that we have defined in that org and all of the tasks there. I can just go ahead maybe on YouTube, say first video. Now this is from this user. If I go back to on the other end, if I refresh, go back to the YouTube, I can now see that user over here as well. Now, to implement this, we're going to create a new Clerk application. We're going to enable orgs and billing. Then we're going to jump into the code and see how easy it is to implement all these three features, authentication, orgs, and billing, using drop-in components and hooks from Clerk. So let's go ahead and create a new application. Let's call this task tracker. Save this up. Now, the first thing that I want to do here is to copy my next publishable key and Clerk secret key. I'm going to come back to my application and replace these two values. I'll explain our application later on. So let's set up Clerk first. So don't worry about that for now. Next up, I want to configure my webhook so that I can sync my user data with my Postgres database. I'm using Postgres and Prisma to store my users, tasks, and projects. We'll have a look at it from a high level in our project. Let's add an endpoint. I'm running this app locally using ngrok. So I'm just going to paste in my endpoint, which is API webhooks and Clerk. I have defined our webhook there to sync the data. Now I'm going to select user-specific events, and then I'm going to create this. Now the only last step remaining is to get the secret, so we make sure that the webhook is actually coming from Clerk, and I'm going to paste this in here. Now I have everything that I need to hook this new Clerk instance application with my Next.js app. Now let's go to organizations and actually enable organizations. Now, when you're enabling organizations, you have two options. You can either allow personal workspaces or accounts, or you can force everybody to join or create a new org. Now, this depends on your specific use case. Some SaaS applications allow personal spaces and team spaces or workspaces. Some might force you to just create an org from the get-go. For example, GitHub, you can have a personal account, but you can also create organizations or workspaces. So this is a personal or business specific matter. We're going to select so that users are forced to create an organization. I'm going to enable this. Here we can modify some top-level organization settings. We have a dedicated video on the channel where we talk about this in more details. I'll make sure to link that in the description. Things like number of members in each org, whether or not you have verified domains to invite new members. So you can watch that video if you want to learn more. We also have roles and permissions. This is how you implement role-based access control, or RBAC. We start off with 2 roles. You can add custom roles, and for each role, you have some system-level permissions that's necessary for Clerk to operate, but you can also add custom permissions and assign them to different roles that you're creating inside of your app. So again, this is a high-level overview. For more detailed explanation, please refer to the video that I link in the description. And then now we have orgs inside of our Clerk instance. Let's go ahead and actually also enable billing so that we can have billing and subscription together with orgs in the same place. Billing is enabled now, so we can enable this for user billing, meaning that if you're creating a direct consumer app, we can charge individual users for subscriptions, or we can have it enabled for orgs, which is subscriptions for organizations. Now that I have billing enabled, I can go to subscription plans and create different subscription plans. Now, let's go ahead and create an organization plan that we're going to be using inside of our app. The name is Pro, and we're going to have a description for it. Let's say Pro tier. Let's give it a monthly price of $47. You can also have an annual discount. You can enable the free trial over here, and you can decide if it's publicly available or not. If you decide that it is going to show up in your pricing table and organization profile, as we saw before in the demo in the beginning. And if you turn this off, it would be a plan that you can maybe only offer it to specific clients, but then it's not publicly available for people to subscribe to. Now, another thing here is on each pricing plan, we can define features. We can then access these features and control access to different parts of our application using feature flags or using functions and hooks from Clerk. We're going to see this in action as well. So let's give them the ability to create projects. And let's say unlimited projects. And let's create this feature as well. So now that I have a feature and a pricing plan, I'm going to save this up. Let's now go ahead and open up our application at hamid.ngrok.app. Let's close this off. Let's actually go ahead and sign in the same flow that we have had as before. Selecting a user. This is a new instance, so I have to sign in again. I'm enforced to create an orgs here, so let's call it friends again. And now I'm back to the task tracker dashboard. Now let's go to the code and see how we're implementing this. This is a Next.js 16 application, so from a high level, we have the layout, just wrapping Clerk provider around our app. We're using our ShadCN theme. If you haven't seen this, we now have a dedicated ShadCN theme that ties into your global CSS and all the variables that you have defined for ShadCN. So your Clerk components look and feel like the rest of your application. That's pretty cool. Check it out if you haven't seen it already. Now, from a high level, on the home page, I'm using the auth function from Clerk. And this is all you need to really implement authentication, access orgs, and also billing. So it gives you the active session, user ID if you need to, and org ID, session claims and whatnot, and also this has function. And this is where the power lies. Just with this has function, I can check to see if this current logged in user has access to the Pro plan. This is billing. But I can also check to see if the user has a specific role. This is where organizations, roles, and permissions, or RBAC, comes into play. I can also check for permissions. It's all using this one single function. But out of this auth object, I'm getting the current org ID. That's the active org ID. Keep in mind that a specific user can join multiple different organizations, but at each point in time, only one active org exists. And this org ID is that currently active organization. So I'm going to use that org ID to get the data for that org ID using this function that I've defined here. It finds my projects. If there is no default project, it creates one. If the user logs in for the first time, gets all the projects and all the tasks. And now I'm just destructuring tasks and projects and the default project ID and sending it down to this task board. So let's go to the task board. Here again, I'm managing some local state and I'm rendering a project selector, a create task dialog. That's a create a new task dialog we saw together, and a pipeline that's using a Kanban board from Kibo UI. If you haven't used Kibo UI, I highly recommend you check it out. If you love ShatsCN, you're probably going to love this. So it has a bunch of different components that you typically don't see in your ShatsCN default components. I'm digressing, but that's what I'm using here. I'm using the use optimistic hook to optimistically update our tasks when creating, updating, reordering, or changing the status. And down here, I'm using the Kanban board from Kibo UI, as I mentioned. For each column, I have different states or define different columns in my app. And I'm just mapping over the tasks. And for each task, I'm just rendering a Kanban board over here. So lastly, let me also show you the header component that we have, where I'm using the organization switcher. That was a drop-down that allowed the user to switch between different organizations. I'm also using signed in and signed out components. These are control components from Clerk to show the user button or a sign-in button. And lastly, let's check out our pricing page, where I'm just dropping in the pricing table component from Clerk, passing a prop to tell Clerk to only fetch pricing tiers that I've defined for my organizations. As you remember, you can have pricing plans for users and also organizations. And that's a wrap for this video. With a few lines of code and some drop-in components from Clerk, we were able to create a foundation for user management authentication, a multi-tenant architecture, and also billing and subscription management, all in one single platform. If you have any questions, like always, hit them down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.